episode of Tea Time with Teens. I'm your host Diamond, and I thank you for listening in to this episode today. This episode today, we have a very nice topic. It was pretty highly requested in all of my Instagram polls. So if you're not following me on Instagram, definitely follow it at Tea Time with Teens. It'll probably be linked down in my bio, or maybe I'll put it in the comments if I'm feeling fancy. But either way, I thank you for listening in. And so, as you could probably tell from the title of this video, we're going to be talking about body image in the media, social media, how people around us affect how we view ourselves, and kind of all the factors that go into how a person looks at their body. So I think that this episode will be definitely relatable to, people of the older generation, but especially the people of the younger generation as well that maybe struggle with loving themselves or loving their body in general. So I really wanted to do this topic because I think I have a lot to say about it, and you'll probably see that in a minute. But I want to start off with the idea of why are people insecure in their bodies? And I think it all nails down to a couple different things, a couple different factors. I'll list some of those, which are number one, social media, TV shows, models, celebrities, and also our family members, our parents, people around us that contribute to how we see ourselves, that really have a big influence in our lives and whose opinion we possibly trust. I want to go and get into those in this video, so if you're interested in that, definitely stay tuned and subscribe. So like I was saying, who's to blame for why people look at themselves in such a distorted lens? Well, the first one I want to go and talk about is obviously social media. I feel like that's kind of the most obvious one. So I'm going to start with there. And I feel like some people don't realize how young, especially young girls, start to go and criticize and look at their body differently. I know for some girls, it might have been 8 years old. It might have been 9, 10 years old, even middle school age as well. Middle school, you're going through puberty. That's a big age where people get it. But a lot of girls start much earlier than that, when they're 9, 10. So let's think 4th, 5th grade. I think a big part of this comes from social media in general. When kids are finally getting their phones, they're finally getting technology, they're watching YouTube videos, they see kind of one standard of beauty. And that standard of beauty isn't necessarily always natural. And this is where I want to talk about filters. So specifically Instagram filters. So I know back in the day there was like Snapchat, stuff like that. There was like different, fun sort of colorful filters that obviously you knew the person was using a filter. But as the years started to go on, it's like you could barely see the difference in when someone was using a filter or Photoshop and when they weren't. Now that Photoshop, people have tutorials on that, are learning how to use it more. I think that when people are uploading these images and you can't necessarily see that they have a filter, it won't show that there's a filter on their picture. I think it gives, especially young girls, a very distorted image of how they should look, how their facial features should look, and eventually, with Photoshop, how their body should look. And I think you see that with like a lot of models pages, a lot of Instagram influencers whose bodies actually do not look like that, but it's Photoshopped and it's edited to make you think that, oh, your body should look like that. And I'll probably go more into like that kind of feature, at the end of the video. But I think it's very important that people are showing their real selves on social media. Obviously, if you have like a little, filter to clean up a blemish or just make your skin look smooth or something like that, okay, I get that to a certain extent, but that should not be everything that you're posting, that you cannot tell the difference between your unfiltered photos and your filtered photos. If you're thinking that your filtered photos are what you actually look like, then I think that you might have a problem. So that's just what I'm going to say about that. And also nowadays, people can even actually, which I found really interesting, can filter videos. They can have a filter over their videos, which I thought was super interesting, especially when it comes to makeup tutorials apparently, which I don't follow, but I did see this mentioned before, where it says that people were always confused when they put on makeup after doing these makeup tutorials, and their skin did not look super smooth, super fresh, and just like doll-like compared to the people that they were watching perform these tutorials. And that was because these social media or these YouTube makeup influencers, they were constantly using filters on their videos to give that appearance that they had no pores, to make their skin look super duper shiny, super duper smooth, like baby like, where you could not tell that they had on makeup. And then these regular old people are just like, well, why doesn't my face look that beat? Why doesn't it look that smooth? Why can I see the makeup actively on my face? And that's because that's what makeup actually looks like on somebody's face. Makeup does not make your blemishes invisible. Despite what people might think, you can still see that. You can still see the texture on your face, and that's a normal human thing. And I think that's just so funny, and it really sort of feeds into this whole body image dysmorphia and stuff that you see nowadays with people, because everything is just so filtered nowadays, and no one wants to show their real self online and then also in person by constantly changing the look of their features. And I just think that's something that's so wild and definitely has a big effect on how young girls start to see themselves, especially when you're younger and you want to dabble and play in makeup, and you're shown all these ways to alter your features, and why doesn't it look like that? I think that's something that's very scary to think about. And also, another big thing is that when we're talking, I'm specifically talking about like younger age kids here. So like I said, 9, 10, 11. So that kind of transition from elementary school to middle school can be very jarring. I mean, during that time, that's where kids are going through puberty, and you're looking a bit rough. I know if I look back at pictures when I was in 6th grade, I'm like, girl, you're looking a bit rough. But I mean, that's just how you're supposed to look. You're a kid going through puberty. You're not supposed to look super duper flawless. And on top of that, I think that people don't realize, or especially adults don't realize, how much influence they have over the way a child perceives themselves, and how much they like the way they look, how much they like the body that they're in. And it comes down to, obviously parents and stuff like that, but also people who own daycares and what they're feeding these children. And it also comes down to aunts, to uncles, to people that are around this child that really speak into this child's life and have influence over how that child thinks of themselves. If a child trusts you and trusts your opinion, please do not tell them certain things or say certain things. I'll get into it in a moment, but it can be very, very harmful, which is what I'm going to get into. But first, I want to discuss the topic of nutrition and children's nutrition in general. So I know that when I was probably about in middle school, 5th grade, 6th grade, I went to this daycare, and specifically a summer camp as well. And I know that they had us eating a lot of junk food. And I don't know if parents necessarily know this when they're sending their kids off to certain summer camps, but a big reason between why kids want to go back to these things is for the food. I mean, yeah, it's for the fun and stuff as well, but also if you're constantly giving me chicken nuggets and fries, I mean, why wouldn't I want to go to your daycare? I mean, I think it's kind of, manipulative when you think about it to children, and especially because I can remember the exact sort of diet or what they were feeding us each week. I remember during summer camp that Mondays we would have cheeseburgers from Wendy's. Tuesdays it would be Taco Tuesday, so tacos from Taco Bell. Wednesday it would be pizza. Thursday it would be hot dogs, because we would go like to the lake or something like that. And Friday it would be chicken sandwiches. Now the fact that I'm in 11th grade and I haven't been there in like maybe 5 years, and I still know the stuff that they were feeding us like in my mind by day, that just shows how enforced and ingrained this kind of nutrition was set upon us. And they also did not have healthy snacks. They were serving, the fun snacks like the cupcakes, the chips. They had vending machines. They had ice cream that you could buy for 50 cents or $1, and they had different types of juices. They had lemonade. And I think that adults don't realize how big of an influence they have when it comes to these children's health. And I don't think it's something that they take into consideration enough or take responsibility of. And that can be really detrimental to a child's health, and especially their body image. I know when I look back at times when I was going to that daycare, obviously I look a bit thicker than what I would probably look like if I was not going there and eating all the junk that they were feeding me. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I don't like this stuff anymore. I'm tired of eating this stuff. And I asked my parents if I could bring a lunch and stuff like that. And that was a whole situation as well. So it's just like, especially parents, if you're going to send your child to a daycare or somewhere where they're going to be feeding your child, you need to look and set the nutrition standards for your child yourself. You don't need to have other people impending on these children's lives and feeding them all this stuff and be unaware to it, and then wonder why your child's gaining weight and they're not losing weight and they look a certain way. Yes, to a certain extent, that could be from puberty, but sometimes you're just feeding utter junk to kids, and adults need to realize that they need to take the health and nutrition of their child a bit more seriously, especially because we are Gen Z kids, and then the kids after us have had iPads for Lord knows when. I don't know what they're called. I've heard them be called the iPad generation. But when you're having all this technology access right in front of you, your kid is not going to be playing outside riding their bike every single day. They're going to be on YouTube or on TikTok or on Instagram or on some kind of mobile game. They're not going to be outside playing tag with their neighbors anymore. Instead, they're inside, they're on their bed, they're on their phones, they're on their tablets, so they're not getting any other movement. And then when you're saying like, okay, you're getting fat or something like that, you need to start working out, the kid's not going to want to do it because they haven't been conditioned to know that that's something that they should do. Ultimately, I feel like parents nowadays give way much power to technology and way too much power to other people parenting their kids. And that's what I'm going to go and say there. And then when you're having these children, gain all this weight and they don't know how to lose it, and they're looking back to the Barbie dolls, to, the Disney princesses that they grew up seeing, and they're realizing, oh, my body's not looking like that. They're going to be confused and they're going to be like, well, okay, I'm fat, so how do I get rid of it? I want to look like that. And that kind of goes into my next point, which is sort of diet culture, which again goes back to YouTube. This doesn't even have to be like an Instagram thing. Most kids have YouTube and can look up, okay, diets to lose weight, how to lose weight fast. I know a lot of kids, a lot of us were looking up how to lose weight, how to exercise, all that stuff. Ended up failing multiple times because we didn't know what we were doing, and we're basically trying to figure out this whole abyss of nutrition by ourselves because our parents weren't, there helping us learn all these different things. I mean, mine were to a certain extent, but I mean, you can't just put the nutrition of your child in your child's hands, because they're going to find unhealthy ways of dieting and eating right and exercising. They're going to find unhealthy methods to try and lose the weight so that they can look better, so that they can look like who they always wanted to become. Like I said, the Disney princesses, the dolls, the characters in movies that they're generally taking in and seeing, they want to look like that. And so when they don't look like that, they're confused, like, okay, is there something wrong with me? And they're like, okay, well, I guess I should look more into my weight. And this is where they can start counting calories, which is something that is very dangerous. Some people might still agree with the simple idea that, okay, just eat less calories, work out, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, that's not true for everybody. There are a certain amount of calories and carbs somebody needs to build muscle, to be at a healthy weight for themselves. And I'm telling you, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 9-year-old child does not know that. So they're just writing down every little thing they see in a packet, tracking it, and ultimately that can lead to an eating disorder that many parents might not even realize. And that's something that's super dangerous and can go on for years because of these body standards that now as they're getting older, they're being held to these even higher standards and realizing that they have to maintain that sort of look. And that's something that's very dangerous. And I think that's something that parents and people of older generations should be aware of as well. Another thing, because I was talking mostly about middle school, elementary school, like I said, with the standards getting higher and higher, I want to talk a little bit about the influence that sort of teen high school shows have, because there's always been this sort of high school aesthetic of how you want to look, and people don't realize, or when you're younger and maybe a freshman or 8th grade, you think that high school is going to be all this, just like you thought middle school was going to be so cool. You think high school is going to be like the coolest thing on earth, and you're wondering why you're 9th, 10th grade and don't look like a grown woman that you see on TV. Because most of the time when there are teen shows, which I want to talk about in a different episode, kind of the adultification or maturing of teenagers in somewhat teen or high school shows, because I think that's also very damaging to people's minds as well. But most of the times, these directors, producers, they are hiring 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds to play teenagers. Now, that mostly goes back to a legal reason, because they want to be able to have adults on set at all time. And if you have someone who's under 18, they can't hold you because of child labor law, stuff like that. Okay, we got that. But now you're having 25-year-olds, grown women, and also grown men, because I feel like it can definitely be something detrimental to young boys as well. And they're portraying these high schoolers. And so when you're looking at these high school shows and you're younger and you finally get to high school, again, you're let down because you don't look like a 25-year-old who's been packed with makeup and has had time to develop all of their features. You're wondering why you have such a baby face, why your face isn't sculpted to the max, why your body isn't super curvaceous and quote unquote womanly yet. And that's because you simply haven't developed to that point yet. You're not even like fully developed until like past 18, like forget legal ages, you're not developed to like probably 20 something, and you're watching these 25-year-olds act as teenagers and thinking that you're supposed to look like that, or even that you're supposed to dress like that, and why doesn't your body look great in these clothes that they're wearing, and so forth. And that's because you're simply just not as grown as them. And I think it's kind of a false advertising thing as a narrative as well. And especially when I think about young guys and the guys that I see in these high school shows that you see in shows like All American. I don't really watch too many high school shows, so I can't really talk about all of them. But especially, I know when I watch All American, guys my age do not look like Spencer. They do not look like Asher. They do not look like JJ. They all look like teenage boys on steroids, to be honest. It's perfectly probably healthy for them to look like that at 25, 30. But a teenage boy usually does not look like that. From what I've seen, they don't look like that. And I can only imagine how damaging that could also be for guys who are taking in content like that, who are maybe working out, trying to build muscle, trying to get super strong and stuff like that, and wondering why they don't look like these guys who are so incredibly ripped. And I'm like, that's because you're a teenager, you're a child. You're not supposed to look like that. You don't look like that maybe until you're 22, maybe at the youngest. I mean, you see people like Zac Efron and stuff like that. And he was not looking as ripped as he was in Baywatch when he was in High School Musical. And that is just a fact. And he said even when he was doing stuff like Baywatch and getting that super ripped surfer look, that was unhealthy for him. And I feel like guys have the same kind of body image standards as women as time, not the same, but somewhat similar in the ways that they can definitely be damaging. And I think it gives both, sides, both genders, sort of a false narrative as to how one should look and how one should present themselves, which is why I want to kind of get into celebrities in general. Like, we're talking about actors, actresses now, but celebrities also including models, musicians. I don't think a lot of us realize how much work these people have had done. Sometimes it's like really subtle, especially if they are actors and actresses, but they get these little things done throughout the years to create this ultimately perfected sort of image. And then on top of that, they have professional makeup artists, professional trainers, access to all these nutritional foods, and some people can really look up to them and be like, oh, they look snatched. And of course they look snatched. So that's because they have professional trainers and they're getting all these dresses to fit their body type, or if they don't fit that body type, the designer is going to make sure that they do before they put them in the dress. And so they're going to look this certain way and look, otherworldly or like majestic. And that's because it's simply unnatural and unhumane to look like that. That's not normal. That's not what normal humans look like. Normal humans do not have all these perfections to their face. I tell you, if you look back at Ariana Grande when she was younger, she does not look, as, she looks beautiful either way, but she does not look as glamorized or majestic as people would say if you looked at her now. And it goes with Bella Hadid as well. They all look like normal people. They look like regular girls that you would see down the street. I mean, and that's not a bad thing. They just look like actual humans, like the humans that they are. And I don't think that people should judge based on that, because these celebrities can even have jobs done to, their body to configure and look different and all that kind of stuff. We all know about the Kardashians and all they've been doing and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like some people don't realize that other celebrities get the same procedures. They may not look as dramatic. They can still get these same procedures. And then people are shoving it out. Oh, like they're so natural. They never got anything done. And they lie about their plastic surgery. And that's so damaging because, yeah, if you want to get plastic surgery, go ahead and do what you want to do. If you want to go under a knife and pay $1,000 to make your nose look slightly different, okay, sure, go ahead and do that. But I mean, when you're lying to people about it, when they're lying about their plastic surgeries, it's giving young girls, their young fans, the impression that, oh, they just look like that, and why don't I just look like that? Like, again, setting these false narratives and ultimately creating this body dysmorphia for all of these young girls. And it's something that's so hurtful. And now these girls are like, well, I guess if I don't look like that naturally, I guess I better cover my face with makeup to try to contour to make it look different and make it look like I'm a completely different human than I actually am. Or I should filter it all down and filter my body and make my waist go in like that. I mean, when you look at pictures like that, humans don't look like that. And I think that's something, like I said, it's super damaging and it's just so fake in a way. And I still use social media and stuff like that. I don't think social media is all bad and stuff like that. It's spreading horrible images and stuff like that. But I think that some people can use it for, or the way that they use it and portray themselves on it is super duper fake. And so with this video, this isn't to shame anybody who's gotten plastic surgery, puts on a whole lot of makeup, filters and stuff like that. I'm just saying to show your real face some of the time. I mean, if you want to contour it and show how it looked, at least do it before and after so that we know that you're human and that you're not an alien that just came from Mars or something like that. I mean, just show us that you're a bit human. That's all I want to say. And without further ado, I want to go into this week's Bible verse. So for this week's Bible verse, I really wanted to pick a scripture that kind of relates to what I'm talking to with kind of body dysmorphia and ultimately how, if you're constantly trying to go after this, perfect image that you see other people go after, it's going to cause a little bit of jealousy, which is kind of what this scripture kind of talks about. So this scripture comes from Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 30. And it says, "A peaceful heart leads to a healthy body, and that jealousy is like cancer in the bones." So when I was reading this, it's kind of like if you're at peace with how you look when you're healthy, just not even when you're healthy, if you're at peace with yourself at any time in your life, maybe it's not the dream body that you want now, maybe it's not the healthiest, but if you can be at peace with that and say that I want to work towards being a better me and getting healthier, then that's ultimately what's going to make you the happiest. You can see all these people that have plastic surgery, have the perfect bodies, and they're still insecure about themselves. And why? That's because ultimately they're constantly trying to fit a new aesthetic, a new ideal. This causes jealousy or insecurity. And then they're ultimately just not at peace with themselves. But you can see somebody who's maybe in a thicker body, healthy, does things right as far as nutrition wise. May not be the skinniest body, but it's a healthy body. And they're at peace with themselves. They don't care about what beauty standards are going on. They just have such a peace with themselves and love themselves for who they are, no matter what size they are, no matter how they look. Ultimately, this is going to help you to feed your body the right things you need because you respect and love it so much and you're at peace with yourself, and that comes from within. And it's not something artificial or on the outside to prove to somebody else that you're worth it. And I just like this verse. It's from Proverbs, like I said, 14:30. And yeah, I just wanted to include it in this episode. So if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I would definitely like you to consider subscribing to my channel or sharing this message if you thought it was helpful on Facebook or on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at TeaTime with Teens or Facebook with TeaTime with Teens. I also have, if you just like listening to audio, you can listen to it on Spotify. And thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.